So I wanted to do a video on the inner critic, and the inner critic is actually referred to within the psychological realm as the superego. And when we've come from a very hostile or not very nurturing family, where there has been a lot of verbal abuse especially, as well as maybe possibly physical abuse, we gain this hypercritical parent voice, and it becomes almost like this corrosive, venomous voice which guides our actions. And then when we're in a situation that reflects an original trauma, it kicks up and becomes online, and it runs this kind of endangerment program. And we have this feeling of this completely washed over with toxic shame, toxic guilt, sheer self-hatred, terror, the list goes on. And something that you can do, and in the book I'm writing at the moment, which is a healing guide, it's like a healing guide through this maze of complex trauma. A lot of the symptoms from childhood, actually, when you've gone a very not a very nurturing household from your family of origin, you actually run parallel, not exactly, but you run parallel to a lot of the symptoms of PTSD survivors. Kind of the example, the analogy, someone in a concentration camp, it would be normal for someone in a concentration camp to feel a normal sense of hatred towards the guards. But a child cannot. He cannot feel a certain way because the parent will clock onto that and possibly take away the needs. A child is very dependent on the parent to provide nurturing, protection, guidance, and then all the physiological needs as well, food and whatever else. So they're highly dependent. So the moment one of the parents takes something away from them, it can bring a lot of traumatic experiences to the child, because it endangers their safety, their love. Love is kind of the currency they work with when they're young. They don't have houses and cars. They operate on feeling and nurturance and stuff like that. So something that you can do when that inner critic kicks up and becomes online again is not to side with it. So what you can do is doing some kind of what I call the whole spectrum of healing I call original inner justice work, where you kind of rewrite the wrongs of your childhood. Otherwise the past in a way just keeps repeating itself until you find resolution in that aspect of your childhood, that fragmented, incomplete awareness, until you bring awareness to it, resolve it in real time. Otherwise, all these kind of incomplete awarenesses and experiences kind of get suspended in fear, and we keep reliving them, trying to find resolution in them, and they call it repetition compulsion. And oftentimes that is just a very long, arduous process of, having to repeat all these traumatic experiences rather than just focusing on let's just try and heal it now. And then you can get on and have this energy for the things you need in your life in the present. So something what you can do is doing something what I call inner self-champion work, or just self-championing. And what it means is that you challenge them inner voices. Oftentimes as well with the inner critic, it triggers what is called an emotional flashback. So this is where you don't actually have any visual cues of a flashback, which is more traditionally associated with like PTSD war survivors. You don't have a visual cue, and sometimes you don't even have an auditory cue because it has gone so unconscious. It's kind of like the humming noise of a refrigerator. It's just been so repetitive in your life, you don't really hear it. It's only until you quiet down and turn up the volume that you actually begin to realize what it is saying. But oftentimes it goes unconscious, and then when we get hit with these reflections of our original traumas, it reverberates, and we have no idea why. So what you can do when you get triggered by them endangerment programs of the inner critic, or what I call the inner golem, is to do some kind of angering work. And this is where you can do some either physical angering work, where you clench up and you do a kind of tactical, strategic temper tantrum, where you could say things like no, really, like angrily. It's like cultivating this form of healthy aggression. You can say shut up. You can even swear, and the idea is, or you can say things like, you can, treat me with respect or don't talk to me at all. And the idea is that when we were younger, we didn't have the opportunity to really show healthy forms of aggression. Anger is kind of prohibited. It becomes like this unauthorized feeling within a family unit because oftentimes it's seen as like a form of disobedience, and it could jeopardize us getting our needs met because we were so dependent on our parents. And this isn't just dependent on, when we gain this hypercritical parent voice, it's also kind of anytime we're subordinated to a teacher, any kind of authority, friend, whatever it is, we gain these toxic voices. So by doing some form of physical angering, or as well what you can do with some kind of self-talk, what I call angered empowered thought stopping, you can say the same things you would physically anger with. Something what I like to do is actually do you can do the physical angering work, and then what you can do, because you can, if you've done it so repetitiously, you can use that then as almost like an anchor. So when you're trying to internalize doing it and you're doing it with your self-talk, you can imagine yourself doing your physical angering work, and again you'll have the same the same feelings of neutralizing that shame or guilt, self-hatred or terror. And this way as well, this kind of sets the stage for the rest of the healing continuum. Oftentimes, if that hypercritical inner critic is going off, it will be very, very, very difficult to grieve your losses from childhood as well. So anytime you try and cry, you'll feel toxic shame. Anytime you try and feel physical anger in a relationship, you'll have toxic shame. Anytime you try and vocalize your issues within a group or a counselor, you'll feel toxic shame. So just to set the stage for the rest of the healing continuum, what you can do is actually doing this angered empowered thought stopping, or the physical angering self-champion work, and that way you begin to silence that critic and you begin to stop the repetition compulsion. Like I said before, the past kind of repeats itself until you have found that resolution in it moving forward. And that doesn't mean necessarily forgiveness, because oftentimes if you forgive something too soon, you kind of begin to minimize and fall into the patterns of almost denial, which is a protective mechanism to not feel extreme negative emotions. So what I really recommend to start with on your healing journey is actually trying to silence that critic. So using things like I said, shut up, or shut the fuck up, or no, don't talk to me like that. And if you internalize that and you practice it out loud, if you're doing the physical angering, that doesn't mean necessarily shouting. You can actually just kind of mute your voice, make the same facial expressions and kind of act it out in silence, and do the physical movements of anger as well. And it's very, very beneficial. You cut off that repetition compulsion of repeating certain events, because you begin to neutralize the shame and guilt, terror, self-hatred. So I hope you have found that beneficial. It's a massive first step in the right direction if you're really looking to heal some of them childhood wounds, which might be causing you a lot of toxic shame, unnecessarily self-hatred, terror, the list goes on. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much.